Coffee, anyone? Introduction. One of the most famous and controversial civil cases in the last few decades was the case of Liebeck v. McDonald's Restaurants, which involved McDonald's coffee. In 1994, an elderly woman purchased a cup of coffee from the McDonald's drive-thru, but it spilled in her lap. The coffee caused third-degree burns. The woman claimed McDonald's was at fault for serving her hot coffee. So, she sued McDonald's, claiming that the coffee was hotter through the drive-thru than it was when purchased inside the restaurant, and that this hotter temperature caused the wounds she suffered. A judge initially awarded the woman nearly $3 million, but the amount was reduced on appeals. McDonald's case. The lawyers who represented McDonald's made several arguments in the case. They stated that McDonald's coffee was no hotter than any other drive-thru coffee, that the coffee wasn't dangerously hot, that the coffee needed to be at a high heat because most of their customers would consume it after they reached their destination, that the coffee had a warning label on it, and that Liebeck ultimately was responsible for the spill, not McDonald's. Liebeck's case. Liebeck's lawyers provided evidence that countered some of McDonald's claims, showing that their drive-thru coffee was tens of degrees higher than their competitors and that their own internal research showed that customers actually intended to drink their coffee in their vehicles. They also argued that coffee at 190 degrees Fahrenheit would cause third-degree burns in only a few seconds, and that lowering the temperature would provide more time for someone to clean the spill without severe injury. Their ultimate argument was that McDonald's was serving a defective product, the heat was just dangerously high. The media's spin. At the time, most of the media coverage of the suit presented it as the height of America's tendency to file frivolous suits and simplified the case into a woman trying to make millions of dollars off of spilled coffee. It was used in popular arguments for tort reform, legislation that would limit the ability to bring similar suits, or at least reduce the damages they could sue for. Modern retrospectives and documentaries that examine the case take Liebeck's position and her injuries more seriously, but older Americans still are likely to look at the case as symbolic of America's overindulgence in civil suits. The results of the case. Initially, Liebeck was found to be 20% responsible for the incident since she spilled the coffee, therefore, McDonald's would pay 80% of the genuine costs she incurred, such as her medical bills for the skin grafts and other treatment, resulting in $160,000 in compensatory damages. The millions of dollars in punitive damage originally awarded were calculated as how much McDonald's would have earned from 2 days of coffee sales, at roughly $1.35 million a day. The punitive damages were reduced on appeal to $480,000, and the case was settled out of court in the end for an undisclosed amount. It is rare for civil cases to attract such widespread attention. More often, criminal cases capture the attention of the masses. Civil case process. Civil cases are those that involve disputes between individuals. They usually involve money, business, real estate, other properties, or personal injury. They also encompass family law, such as divorce courts, custody hearings, and estate cases. For example, you might bring a civil case against an individual who injured you in a car accident. Timeline of a civil court case. Initial pleadings. The person who initially brings a case against someone is known as the plaintiff or petitioner. The plaintiff files a motion known as a complaint, which lists the facts of the case and names the accused person. The court then issues a summons, or a call to court, to the accused person. The person summoned can then issue a responsive pleading that answers the plaintiff's claims. In the responsive pleading, the defendant will list which parts of the complaint she admits to, if any, and which she does not. Pretrial practices. The court establishes deadlines for the parties involved and will set dates for any trials. During a process known as discovery, the two, or more, parties involved will gather information to prove their sides. They will find witnesses, written documents, and other pertinent information. Deposition involves questioning witnesses under oath. Both sides may ask questions of any witness. These interviews may be videotaped or transcribed into written documents and replayed or read at trial. Most civil suits never make it to trial. They are resolved most frequently through mediation, settlements, or motion for summary judgments. Mediation. The court most likely will suggest that parties involved in the case go through a process known as mediation. In mediation, the parties will meet and discuss their positions, with the help of a mediator. A mediator is an impartial, court-appointed individual who presides over the discussion and ensures that it remains orderly. Settlements. Settlements involve both parties making compromises to reach an agreement. If a settlement is reached, the court will be notified that the dispute is resolved. Motion for summary judgments. Motion for summary judgments involves the weighing of the evidence and each side's legal theories to determine if the case has merit and is sufficient for a trial. If the case is found insufficient, the case will likely be solved without a live trial. Instead, written documents will be considered in lieu of a trial. If the case is found to be sufficient, both sides will move forward to a civil trial. Civil trial. Civil cases that make it to trial may be resolved in one of two different manners. They can be bench trials, in which all evidence is presented to a judge who makes all the decisions, or the second option is the more standard jury trial, in which the evidence is presented to an impartial group of people who decide the outcome of the case. Either side can motion for a jury trial if they wish. The plaintiff and defendant can choose to represent themselves in court, or they can hire attorneys to represent them. In a bench trial, the judge will hear arguments from both sides, consider the evidence, and deliver a decision. In a jury trial, the jury will hear evidence, deliver it, and deliver their verdict. The losing party will be asked to pay damages, a certain amount of money, to the winner of the trial. Post-trial. After a court decision is made, individuals involved can make motions, or requests, to have the verdict set aside or modified. They can challenge the finding on the grounds that there were errors in legal procedure, insufficient evidence on issues, or errors in jury instructions. The losing party in the case has the right to file an appeal within a month of the verdict. Criminal cases. Bobby's uncle was arrested for fraud, tax evasion, conspiracy to commit fraud, and mail fraud. Bobby's aunt was also arrested for conspiracy to commit fraud and for being an accessory. Bobby was confused by everything that happened to his family and he wanted to find out just what was going on. He decided to do some research about what would happen to his aunt and uncle next. Crime in the United States is high compared to other nations. The rate of robberies is nearly twice as high as in Canada or France. The rate of homicides in the U.S. is nearly 7 times that of most other nations, and the American people are now, more than ever, aware of all of this. We see crime on the news every day, and many of our lives have been affected by crime in some way, whether it's the increased use of surveillance cameras or having something stolen from us. But how do we, as a society, control crime? The United States has a complex criminal law system that serves to prevent crime and protect the people. Let's take a closer look. Purpose of the U.S. criminal justice system. The U.S. criminal justice system was created at the founding of the country, and it serves an extremely valuable purpose. The U.S. criminal justice system defines criminal behavior, classifies criminal behaviors, prevents wrongdoing, and punishes the wrongdoers. Defining criminal behavior. Criminal law is the right of the government to ensure that individual citizens follow the codes the government has outlined, in order to preserve the society in which the individual resides. Criminal law functions on a basis of 6 components. There are the do's and don'ts in a society that tell its member what they can or can't do. These behaviors are formally outlined in a readily accessible code. If this code is not followed, clear punishment is outlined. The behaviors and code apply to everyone subject to the government's rules. The criminal behaviors injure not only the individual victim but also society as a whole. Conviction of these actions earns the entire society's formal moral condemnation. General criminal law covers the principles that are applicable to all crimes within a society. Many things are covered under general criminal law. Complicity, the state of being a partner in any wrongdoing, liability for incomplete crimes, and defensible positions to liability are all part of the general coverage of criminal law. Incomplete crimes are those that are interrupted, such as attempted robbery or conspiracy to commit murder even if no robbery or murder has taken place. Defenses to liability include self-defense and insanity.